Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about the Legacy of Frisia event, which is going to be running at some point reasonably soon. We don't have a firm timeline yet, but hopefully we'll get that later this week. Legacy of Frisia is in many ways a what-if event. What if Grinding Gear Games had made quite different choices to the ones they ended up making in Path of Exile 1? What if the normal 19 ascendancies were replaced by 19 different ones? And I've already posted videos on 3 of the 19. One more has been spoiled, and I've got a video for that already recorded, but I decided to release this one first. However, if you are keen to preview the one on the Servant of Arakaali, I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. It is currently online, you will be able to watch it. I'm just not going to publish it at the same time as this video goes live. Anyway, the Legacy of Frisia event will also totally transform the existing Atlas. None of this Atlas passive tree we've grown to know and to love. Instead, we're going to have an idol system instead. Those of you that have played Last Epoch might be familiar with the idol system there, and I can see a little bit in common, although there the idols are about character power, and here they're about content specialization in maps. You'll have a new tab on the map receptacle UI, and this allows you to modify your maps. But unlike scarabs, these are not consumed when you use them. These are permanent things that you can use as many times as you want in order to augment your maps in various ways. You might think of this as being reasonably similar to the Sanctum or Path of Exile 2, the Trials of the Sekhmet, and the relic system that exists there. Now, in this, magic idols can have up to 2 modifiers, rare idols can have up to 4, and there are unique idols that mimic keystones from the Atlas passive tree. Idols can be traded, but they cannot be modified. Now, I believe that this is going to mean that magic idols are going to feel really bad. They're going to be something you want to use for a little while, but then quickly get rid of them, replace them with rare ones that maybe have 4 modifiers of which you want 2, but the other 2 are not actively detrimental. Pandemonium Scar here is an example of a burial idol, and here, Abyss Crux in your maps have a 3% chance to spawn all monsters as at least magic. That's something on the Atlas passive tree normally. Delirium in your maps increases 24% faster with distance from the mirror. Your maps which contain breaches have 2% chance to contain 3 additional breaches, and your maps have a 33% chance to contain Einhar. This is a pretty powerful Atlas cluster, but it's also not cohesive. It's something where there's a lot of individual power there, but you're going to want to stack a bunch that affect the same mechanic and build up as much cohesiveness as you can. Ultimately, I feel that this is going to work really well in trade. In solo self-found, it's going to be very messy, and ultimately it's going to be up to you which of those mechanics you prefer. Also, we have crop rotation here. This is one of the unique examples. This mimics the crop rotation Atlas keystone that exists, which is something that's quite powerful in Harvest, and additionally, very, very importantly, this allows you to take crop rotation without having to take any of the nodes that lead up to it, which can allow you to have a whole bunch of extra flexibility. I think we're going to see a lot of ways to scale up single aspects of the Atlas to new heights with this system, but at the same time, we're going to have a lot less determinism as we're progressing through the Atlas. I also think this is really, really substantially going to impact early map progression. You are definitely going to want to save every chance orb you get during the campaign, every alchemy orb that you get during the campaign and early mapping, in order to be able to feed them to Kirak in exchange for maps. I think early on, that's going to feel absolutely mandatory, because early on in progression in Path of Exile 1, you can target a whole bunch of nodes that increase your map sustain. It's going to be RNG how much map sustain you get on your idols early on. I think that could be something that's a bit of a pain point early on in this new system, because this system is not designed to be completely balanced yet. It hasn't had the level of testing that a full league would get, much less a full shift to the entire endgame of Path of Exile 1. Instead, it's something that's been put together pretty quickly. Now, as Grinding Gear Games say here, there's a pretty drastic change to how the endgame will play, given the Atlas tree has been such a fundamental part of the endgame, really ever since 3.13. Now, there was the 3.13 to 3.16 version of the Atlas passive tree, the 3.17 to 3.19 version where you couldn't get 100% chance for mechanics, and then the 3.20 onwards one that was the same as the 3.17 tree, but that had the ability to get 100% chance for a particular mechanic to spawn. One of the major changes is that it turns specializing into different leagues to be less deterministic because it relies on you finding items. On the other hand, it adds a layer of excitement to item drops in the endgame that was not previously there. I think I agree with that. There's going to be a lot of demand for certain idols, I expect. This allows you to have an infinite number of different endgame loadouts for content, no more respecking your tree at all. Now just take out the idols you don't want, put in the ones you do. You'll probably end up with a set of idols for each league. Now with the Atlas tree, you can only get so much of a given stat because that's how much we put on the tree. With this system, you can get a lot more of certain things, pushing limits and boundaries further than ever. For example, you want to have essences on monsters all be at the highest tier, or a much higher number of blueprints you find to be fully revealed, then you're going to be able to find ways to do that. You can imagine here, you've got imprisoned monsters in your maps have at least one essence at the highest possible tier. You could have a whole bunch of copies of this same idol. Or your maps have 53% chance to have a Legion encounter. That should stack with itself. So if you had 6 of those, then you're looking at having 3 guaranteed Legions and an 18% chance to get a 4th one. At least that's the way I believe Legion percentage chance works. However, let's talk about the one of these stats that seems like it could be the most broken. That is, strongboxes open in your maps have a 5% chance to be openable again. Now this stacks linearly with itself, but there's a sort of escalating returns here because once you've had this proc, it's then able to proc again when you try and open that same chest again and again and again. So if you can get 75% chance to be openable again, that doesn't mean you get 1.75 times average value from that strongbox. You actually get 4 times average value from that strongbox. Each time that you open it, it's 25% chance to be destroyed and 75% to be reopenable. The highest percentage I can see that you're getting is actually that 75%. That's assuming that you've got 12 copies of Ghoul Ornament, and so you're getting 60 from the idols, and then you get another 15 from one of the scarabs. That's as high as I can see without access to the Atlas passive tree, but who knows, maybe it's 5 to 6% on this. If you could get 6% in 12 different idols, and then 15 on the scarab, you're looking at 87% then, and then at that point, you're averaging opening almost 8 times for each of your strongboxes. At that point, it starts to become a little bit more worthwhile to roll your strongboxes for additional packs and use this as a way to farm items. There's a lot of other potential I'm sure that people will come up with. Who knows whether that's even the best thing that you can do with this system. And then this Empyrean Ornament is something that's a little bit more mundane. 6% chance for your blueprints to drop in your maps to be fully revealed. That's strong, but it's not something ridiculous. 2% chance on completing your maps to gain a free use of a special map crafting option. These are the really special ones, the ones that only come on one of the Atlas notables normally. So that's something that can be good. And ritual altars in your maps allow re-rolling favors and additional time. So a whole lot of flexibility there if you're willing to trade for or source out really, really good idols. Now, given that this is an opportunity for us to let you play with more developmental concepts, you can rest assured you'll find a bunch of broken outcomes in true Path of Exile fashion. Full disclosure, due to these features being experimental for this event, we haven't done the layers of quality of life that we would like to do to accompany it. For example, you would want different inventories for different league sets or loadouts, but instead during this event, you'll have to deal with the management of the inventory yourself because I haven't been able to put in the time necessary in order to provide all of that QOL. Based on the popularity of this system, we can add more of those features in the future to streamline it to minimize item micromanagement. That sounds interesting. Given that players afterwards will likely want to experiment with the Ascendancy classes or the alternate endgame mechanic individually, we're going to be adding both of these as private league options sometime after the event. That sounds really interesting. That requires very careful balancing though with this endgame system. If it turns out that these are stronger, you definitely need to make sure that you can't migrate out of private leagues that have this rule set into the normal game without that rule set. We'll be posting the full details of the Legacy of Frisia event later this week, and we'll be teasing some more of the event ascendancies in the meantime. If you missed them, 4 of the teasers are up already. I've done videos on 3 of them, and like I said, I've done one on a 4th one, haven't released it yet, but I will put a link to it in the bottom left corner of the screen now. Anyways, that is what we know so far about the Legacy of Frisia event. This is looking more and more interesting as we see more info about it, and I'm definitely hyped to see what they're cooking up. May Avalobs have interesting results. I'm going to leave it there.